Hi, I'm Dave Stuart from the Cyberhaven product team, and today I'm talking about the Cyberhaven Analyst Plugin. This is a new agentic capability that lets teams work directly with their Cyberhaven data right inside the tools they're already using. So let me show you what that looks like. Now, your analysts are probably already using AI agents like Claude Code and Codex today, and they're not just asking one-off questions. They're running real investigative workflows, like pulling data together, correlating across sources, working through an analysis step by step. And for that, these agents are genuinely capable. The problem is they have no real visibility into your environment, so they don't actually know what's happening with your data. And often giving the agents the context is the hard part. You need to manually curate and export the data so that you can upload or copy and paste it into the conversation. So that means you're spending time manually stitching together the file, the user, the destination by hand, just so the agent has something to work with. And during that time, the questions that actually matter are just sitting right there. What was the data involved? How sensitive was it? Who touched it? And where it went? That's what the plugin changes. It connects your AI agents directly with your Cyberhaven environment. Now that the data is there, you're investigating alongside your agent. You're asking questions, and your agent's reasoning with what's live in your environment and identifying for you additional avenues for exploration. The work now moves at the speed of that conversation. And by empowering your agent with Cyberhaven's rich context means that your analysts aren't just limited to a dashboard that someone built months ago. They can ask questions of the data directly and get back prioritized reasons answers. Take incident triage, for example. You may have hundreds of incidents in your queue, and normally it would take hours to review all the individual details behind those incidents. But now you can ask it directly, what's the highest priority incident for me to investigate? And as your agent's pulling that information together, you're not just waiting on a static report, you're investigating right alongside with it. So you follow the thread that you care about. Ask the next question as it comes up, and your agent will keep reasoning right alongside with you. It's less like running a query and more like thinking out loud with someone who knows your data. In the middle of that, your agent might flag a use case where your policy or classification has a real gap, and it can recommend for you changes to close that gap and put you in a better posture going forward. You can preview those changes to see exactly what it would do and tighten it up all without ever leaving the conversation. And that just covers the triage use case, which is one of many the Cyberhaven Analyst plugin can do. The Cyberhaven Analyst plugin ships with over 50 pre-built skills and 20 specialized agents. Each skill is this curated workflow built by the people who know Cyberhaven inside and out that walks an AI agent like Claude Code or Codex through a common task in a reliable way each time. And each of these 20 sub-agents are experts to know how to work a specific problem end to end. Together, they give Claude Code or Codex grounding in how best to work with Cyberhaven data. But the point here is you're not just limited to what we ship out of the box. The Cyberhaven Analyst plugin connects directly to the Cyberhaven MCP server, and these skills and subagents are examples of how Claude Code and Codex can work best with it. So if you need something that's not built already, your agent can assemble it in an entirely new bespoke workflow tailored to your exact mission needs. With over 50 skills, I won't walk through each one individually, but it's worth just kind of getting a highlight of the ground they cover. They span more than a dozen categories, and together they track the whole arc of a security team's job. It starts with incident work and investigation, triage, case building, tracing the file across users, mapping the blast radius of an incident. Then they get into threat and user risk analysis, like Gen AI exposure, departing employees, who's trending riskier over time. There's a full set for DSPM and data posture, like data store and location risk and compliance inventory. There's the operational side of managing Cyberhaven, like environment and deployment health, noisy policy tuning and response metrics. And then the part that closes the loop and acting on what you find with policy and dataset recommendation and reporting from executive briefings to POV wrap-ups. The point is in the list itself, you don't have to memorize any of this. Just describe what you need, and then the right skill runs for you. And the Cyberhaven Analyst plugin becomes even more powerful if you're a Linea AI customer. So Linea has already been working on your data long before your analyst ever sits down to review it. As the platform is collecting incidents, Linea is autonomously launching its own investigations in real time, weighing the risk of the user, the destination, the data flow, and thoroughly analyzing the content to truly understand what's actually at stake. Many of this can't be done effectively after the fact. So by the time your analyst comes and opens an incident, this deep analysis is already sitting there waiting. The agent isn't now starting cold. It builds on everything that Linea has already figured out, reasoning across those findings with your policy in a single conversation and handing back a triage plan or a nice briefing. The same skills you saw before are working, but now with much richer data underneath. So I'll start with the Claude Code session. I already have some results previously, so I'm just asking it to reset my demo. And I'll show you in a second what that reset means. But again, if you're if you're a Claude Code user or if you're a Codex user, the plugin will work equally. There's just, there's slightly different install instructions in different environments, and we make that available in our support portal so you can see how to do that. But again, I'm already in a conversation here. I've already have some results that I'll go back and show those results here in a second, but let me just show you, how to get started. And we already have, again, we've developed a number of these different skills. You can see there's a Cyberhaven start skill here that you can just call as a skill, or I can just even just say, let's get started, right? And one of the first things that it should do, and the reason why I reset my demo, is it should ask me here, right, what type of user am I, right? Because again, with these 52, out of the box skills here, there's, large number of workflows that may be better suited for, SOC analysts or better suited for other type of users. And so sure enough, we built this little onboarding experience that you can use to kind of get started. So it says, all right, what describes my role? You can see the options to pick here. I can still type, I can have a conversation, type my own answer. I'm going to pick SOC analyst though to get started. And then based on that, right, it'll go through and it'll say, all right, what are, potential next steps that that might make sense. It's saving my role in there. That's why I had to do that reset earlier, because it already knew I was a SOC analyst. But I can go in today, and so a couple different options, right? I can say, let's clean up duplicate incidents, let's review, today's incidents, let's work the open backlog, investigate a user, etc. Or again, just define in kind of natural language, describe what I want to do. Let's say I want to clean up duplicate incidents, right? And so let's go ahead and kind of start off that workflow. It should ask me more questions, right? What time frame do I want to look at? Let's look at the last 7 days. And I believe there's another question for the skill. So different skills may have different, questions that they ask you, but again, just takes place in a simple conversation here. So we'll see here. I think it's actually launching it. So while it's running, just kind of quick background, right? The plugin right now ships with, again, these 52 out of the box skills, these 20 or so agents, as well as an MCP server, right? So that MCP server will be running locally on your endpoint to connect to the Cyberhaven APIs. In our release coming out in June, or the release that will be built in June, may come out in July for folks. That MCP server will just be part of your console. So it'll be, MCP dot, customer name dot cyberhaven.io, right? And so that server will be just remote. You'll just connect to it and authenticate as if these tools, and you connect to any other connector. It'll just navigate you over on the web. You'll hit authenticate, and then it'll bounce you right back to Claude Code, and you'll be off and running. But if you want to get started right now and don't want to wait for that release, right, you absolutely can. The plugin, again, the zip file will ship with that MCP server. It'll just run locally for each user and then connect and authenticate through our API. It will require you to create an API key. That experience is part of the onboarding experience. I've already done it, but it also just launch you right in. It'll navigate you over to the API creation page. Ask you to create a key, and then there'll be a window, a pop-up, either for Mac within the credential store, or the keychain, or in Windows, the equivalent, right, for you to copy and paste and store that key. So again, a little bit of experience if you want to get up and running right now with the local MCP server. Otherwise, in that late June or the July release, we will have the MCP server running remote. So it's doing the query here. It's looking at the last 7 days. This is a duplicate incident skill, and you'll see here it's referencing that's doing duplicate detection across 3 methods. This skill, and again, I could have read the markdown file, or I could have been asked Claude, how is it that we're determining duplicates, and it would have answered it for me. That the 3 different methods it's looking at here is, was it the same file name going to the same destination by the same user? It's got classic. Was it a hash match where maybe it was the same hash, but it's been renamed and it's been going to different the same destination as a potential duplicate? Or was it this like destination birch, right, where we saw the same file going to multiple different destinations by the same user? It'll show you the options. It'll show you the kind of summary here of who are the users, how many incidents we saw that were duplicate going to the same destination, either by a classic method or this burst method, and which ones it's recommending to keep. because this workflow, one of the things that it can do, and you can see the next steps here, ask me what it wants to do. I'll just hit cancel. Is one of the options was it could have closed out these duplicate incidents for us, right? It could have said, all right, I'm only going to keep, one kind of canonical incident for each group. I'll use the API to close out the other incidents. It'll include a description of why it closed those other incidents with a link back using the UID to the canonical incident. But again, just hopefully helps you manage your workflow a little bit better and just kind of gives you an example of some of the automations and the workflows that it can do here. I'm going to just say I'm done for now. So I'll go back and show some previous, things again, so we don't have to wait for the thing to run. But one of the first things that it had asked me before is, reviewing my recent queue of incidents, right? So again, I picked a SOC analyst in this first demo yesterday, and it said, all right, let's review my open incident backlog. And I picked the last 7 days. And sure enough, it ran the review of all the incidents, about 100 incidents across 17 users. It gave me a high-level summary here, but also produced a report, right? And so I can go and show you that report here. If I can share the right screen, we'll do. Here we go. All right. So hopefully, right, if I've got the screen right, you're seeing the open incident backlog here, where again, it creates this natural language report for you, gives you an executive summary, gives you some statistics, give you some idea of, again, what was 100 incidents over the last month. Let's say I'm just signing in for the first day today, want to quickly review that. Gives me some indications of what it believes is the highest possible risks, and what should be investigated first here, with additional details here about what it's recommending as a priority order to kind of triage these incidents between users that should be investigated immediately, or other kind of lower priority ones for us to consider, as well as giving us, that same thing you saw with that duplicate workflow, that kind of bulk close candidate options here, where again, it might find, duplicates, it may find things that, it might recommend we close even before kind of going in and doing a manual review. And that workflow, when it ran, I'll show you here. So it, again, produced the report. You can see here the link to the report, right? You can open that up in your browser. It gives you kind of, a quick summary here in the conversation. And one of the things that it asked me for the next step, and, it had that nice little UI before, this is just a result of it, is what do I want to do next, right? And I can take its recommendations to do the bulk close. I can do that duplicate cleanup workflow. One of the options was investigate the user that it thinks is the kind of highest priority risk. Tavia, this is the demo environment, so some of our sales engineers, it's recommending to investigate that user. And so I said, yeah, let's investigate that user in depth, right? So now it's doing this kind of user investigation workflow over the last 7 days, find all their incidents, look at some of their insider risk stuff as well, gives us this kind of, headline finding. In this demo environment, our sales engineers, do a lot of activities that would demonstrate high risk. So, it's, saying here that, hey, this looks really suspicious. The tradecraft that they're doing of, renaming files, and exfilling them to their, personal, the personal destinations, channel shopping between sending it to ChatGPT and then Copilot and Gemini, all within a short period of time. All of these things clearly would, in a normal context, represent a, really high or critical risk, that would be worth investigating. And so this skill, this kind of workflow highlights this for us. Again, creates a report that we can view in our browser, and then gives you the ability to, again, continue that conversation of, well, what would I want to do next, right? And so at this point here, I kind of started on that SOC workflow, and I did my triage of the past 7 days of incidents. I found a user that was risky. I investigated that user. I could have kept going down, continuing the conversation specifically for that type of workflow. But I just wanted to highlight here, what else is some of the things that I can do with the plugin, because I mentioned, 50, plus, skills in there that we've built. And you can see here a number of different ones for kind of that, that SOC, triage use case, or the user investigation use case, or, enforcement and policy use case, posture, DSPM, operational health, reporting and briefings. You want to create an executive briefing or compliance posture, or et cetera, right? And then, it's still keeping it in context of this conversation that said, hey, of all these things, like this is potentially some of the next steps that, you may want to do for Tavia. But again, I mentioned that these skills are natural language. And so, when you have the zip file, right, you'll see the markdown files if you want to open them up and read them. But you can also just ask, in the conversation directly, right? I saw deployment health as being an interesting option for a skill. What does it do exactly? Right? I can just ask that question, and it gives you an example of this is what the deployment health skill does. And this is, again, in its analysis of reading that natural language markdown file, it's giving us the answer here of the kind of the workflow that it takes, the outputs. Here's the what you get back. Here's the report, right? Made into HTML, so you can view it in your browser with all these different details that it includes, right? And again, continuing the conversation is asking me if I want to run it. But this is where I think it really gets exciting, kind of this next phase of I can take these out of the box things. Again, we've created these because they're common. We see them in our own use case. We're hearing them a lot from a variety of different customers. So we're building this kind of out of the box experience to make it easy to get started with what is likely the 80%, 75% of common things that you all want to do. But every customer is going to have unique use cases and unique questions they want to ask. The power of this plugin is that you're not limited to just the out of the box skills. And so, just as an example here, I said actually, one thing I'm really interested in is users who are violating policies on the weekends, right? And so I asked it, hey, over the last 30 days, what users in my environments are the riskiest based on their Sunday policy violations, right? And being a chatbot, of course, it agrees that what I said was a great idea. And it ran off to do this workflow to say, all right, over the last 30 days, right, who's doing activities on Sundays. And it notes correctly, there's no out-of-box skill for this just yet, right? But having access to the MCP server and the tools that we make available to query data through our public APIs, and then having access to the context of the other skills we have in there gives it kind of the guidance that it needs to kind of create this, customized, bespoke workflow for us. And so it pulls the last 30 days, it finds the Sundays, it pulls each Sundays for the analysis. In this case, right, we only had, 2 users that were doing stuff on Sundays, right? And so it said Cole here is our riskiest user because of the work he was doing on a Sunday, right? Sending corporate financials to his personal Gmail. He's in the flight risk and the departing employees insider risk group. Again, these are all of our SEs. It's our demo environment, right? And so, on the surface, looks like, right, very suspicious activity to be doing on a Sunday, sending out financial documents to a personal Gmail for someone that is a flight risk and departing employee. So sure enough, it's like, yep, here are the critical incidents, right? This is, what I think we should do here. But the power, again, right, is that I was able to kind of ask this question that we didn't have an out-of-the-box skill for, and it uses the tools, it uses the context of all the out-of-the-box skills to kind of, create a nice kind of curated and bespoke experience for us. Now, all of the same, here's, you see all the different out-of-the-box skills that we have. They'll all have, descriptions here. You can invoke any one of them at any time. By just doing the / command to invoke it, or just, if you just say what you want to do, it will identify if there's an existing out-of-the-box skill and will run that skill for you. Or like this case, right, just do the workflow itself. But we have, a whole number of these out of the box. Really excited for folks here that are interested in kind of getting started and getting up and running to use our out of the box skills. But going further than that, right, we'd love to see how you'd like to kind of innovate on your own, create on your own, improve, right, maybe our skills and kind of extend them further. And this plugin and this platform gives you all the capabilities to do that. The Cyberhaven Analyst plugin is a genuinely powerful capability, and it's available today for Claude Code and Codex, so please download it, point it at your environment, and run your first investigation. I think you'll be really impressed by what you and your team can do.